and I heard a single phrase be whispered directly into my left ear. I used to work at a newly opened 7-Eleven near my university. Not the most glamorous job, but I wasn't picky about where my pocket money came from. Since I had my classes during the day, I could only take night shifts at the store. People who were drunk or high, or both, often came through the automatic doors, looking for something to satisfy the munchies. But other than that, it was a pretty quiet and boring job that I could do while playing on my phone more than half the time. There was one thing odd about the place, though. The automatic doors tended to malfunction from time to time, opening itself when there was no one to be seen on the other side. I'd been jolted out of my web browsing more than once by the sound of the ringing door, only to find that the store was still empty. When I told the manager about it, he called a repairman to fix it. Apparently, the people who worked on the other shifts had reported the doors opening by themselves as well. But when the repairman came, he could find no problems with the door sensors and left without doing anything. My manager was annoyed, but I quickly learned to tune out the sound of the door rings and listened for footsteps instead. The self-opening doors weren't the only problem plaguing the stores, though. One week into me working at the 7-Eleven, food in the store started going bad at an unusually fast rate. The bagged snacks were fine, but everything in the fresh foods section, from the milk to the boxed sandwiches, would go bad the very same day they were put there. Someone even got sick from eating one of the hot dogs and almost sued the store. Thankfully, that happened during the day shift, so I didn't have to deal with it myself. All of it really annoyed my manager, who was convinced that someone must have been tampering with the food without any of us knowing. I don't know how that was possible, but there didn't seem to be any other explanation since the food was all fresh when it arrived. One night during my shift, my manager pulled me aside to talk to me about our spoilage problem. "Hey Erica, are you free after your shift tonight?" "I'm free. Why do you ask?" Had he been anybody else, I would have made some bullshit excuse about needing to do homework. But I had my eye on him for quite some time and was more than willing to go out with him if he was asking. "That's great. Can you stay at the store to check the security camera footage? You'll be paid for overtime, of course." Oh, unfortunately, I wasn't that lucky. I still took him up on his offer though because, hey, it was easy money. Plus, it'll probably help me get into his good graces. I grabbed a bag of potato crisps from one of the aisles and a can of soda from the fridge before going to check the CCTV room to review a day's worth of camera footage, or at least pretend to. I sat back on the creaky swivel chair in front of the computer that was linked to the security camera and started playing footage from the very start of the day at 5 times the speed. As expected, most of it was pretty boring. People came in, put stuff in a basket, and cashed it out at the counter with no major incident. There were a few hungover people in the morning who stumbled in to make fools of themselves, so I at least had a good laugh from that. Things only started getting weird at around noon. I almost didn't see the shadowy figure enter the room at first because of how fast the footage was playing. If it wasn't for the sound of the automatic doors ringing, I wouldn't have caught it so early on. I paused the footage, turned it back to normal speed, and rewound it to when I heard the doors ringing to see if my eyes were playing tricks on me. A tall, dark shape shambled into the store after the automatic doors opened for it. It had a vaguely humanoid body, though it was gray and bone-thin like the corpse of someone who starved to death, with long, gnarled fingers that ended in sharpened nails. The thing was soon followed by another creature just like it, then another, and another, until at least half a dozen of them had filled the empty store. Pitch-black auras emanated from them like fumes of thick black smoke that seeped into the food it passed, leaving behind traces of its darkness. The guy working the day shift cashier either didn't notice or didn't care when whatever it was entered the store. But when other people started entering the store, none of them seemed to notice the creatures either, not even when they were right in front of them. Whenever one of the creatures got near someone in the middle of shopping, it would bend down to the person's height and whisper in their ear. The people didn't seem to hear what it said, but I heard its words whisper loud and clear thanks to the camera microphones. "Can you see me?" The things whispered the phrase over and over again into the ears of the unwitting shoppers and even the clueless cashier working the counter at times. Nobody ever paid them any mind. I sped up the footage once more and saw dozens, if not hundreds, of the shadow creatures file in and out of the store over the course of the day. The same phrase was whispered on all their gray lips. "Can you see me? Can you see me? Can you see me?" I should have run out of the store right then and there, but a sixth sense of curiosity kept me glued to my seat. I reasoned that if they haven't hurt anyone in the store during the day, just watching a recording of them would be harmless. I watched the footage showing me during my shift, watching over a store full of the shadow creatures without even realizing it. I watched me talking with my manager about staying overtime to watch the security camera, and I watched as I entered the CCTV room, followed by one of the shadow creatures that bent under the door frame to enter it after me. The blood in my veins ran ice cold, and I heard a single phrase being whispered directly into my left ear. "Can you see me?"
I work as a gas station employee in the state of Maine. It's a pretty quiet job, but I don't mind it. It's just another day when a man in a thick coat and a hat comes into the store and asks for a pack of bubble gum. Anything else I can get for you? That'll be all. All right, sir. Your total is $3.92. Have a great day. I ring him up and he pays cash and leaves. That happens every day. You feel me? Well, it happened differently today. Maine is a state that you can't ever really describe unless you've been there. The cold, desolate gray fog rolled in from the Atlantic, a blizzard setting in just as I was about to close up shop. It's nights like these that make me wonder if I'm really cut out for this job. Anyway, I digress. Let me explain to you what happened to me today and why I'm never going back to that 7-Eleven again. I waved goodbye to the customer as he went out into the cold night, and I followed him out the door. The clock was a few minutes before the time I had to close anyway, so I'd figured I'd close early and bid farewell to that 7-Eleven. After all, nobody would be out in a blizzard like this, and I wouldn't be too long. It was then that I noticed the man had stopped at the corner of the lot, just staring at me. Nodding to him, I made my way back toward my car, but the man started loitering towards me. "Hey boy," he said, "you finished up at that 7-Eleven? Mind giving me a ride home?" "Isn't that your truck over there?" I asked, pointing to the black pickup parked a few feet away. I could feel the hairs standing on the back of my neck, but I tried to stay calm. He smiled and shook his head, mumbling something about the cold being too much. I sighed and started to unlock my car door, but something made me look back. The man was still standing there, his eyes boring into me with an expression I can only describe as hungry. I rushed to the car and locked the doors, my heart pounding in my chest. I thought I heard him say something, but I was too scared to stay around and find out. Starting my car, I swiveled my head to make sure he wasn't following me. To my relief, I heard the engine of a truck rev as he pulled out of the parking lot, the smoke from his exhaust clouding the night sky. I drove home faster than I ever had before, watching the shadows of the trees as they danced in my rearview mirror. The skies quickly darkened as I settled in for my near-hour drive into the Maine wilderness to the next town over, where I lived. For those who don't live in Maine, I want you to imagine it. The cold, the darkness, and the silence. I never felt so alone in my life. As I got closer to home, a voice in my head told me to look into my rearview mirror one last time before turning down my lane. A chill ran up my spine, and I froze. The man in the hat was following me. His truck was barely visible in the darkness, but I recognized it easily. It was a dirty white, with dents and scratches all over the hood. I felt chilled, and although I figured it was a coincidence, something inside me told me that it definitely wasn't. There's no chance he lives in the same direction as I do, right? I whispered to myself, my stomach tied in knots. He had to. As I drove, though, I didn't turn into my driveway like I wanted to, and I instead turned down a street on the opposite side of the road. I looked into my rearview mirror, and to my relief, he had vanished. My relief was short-lived though, as around the corner I saw headlights and the faint silhouette of the truck in my rearview mirror. He had followed my turn, and I felt fear grip my heart. I drove faster, my hands shaking on the wheel as I took another turn, making sure this time that it was down an alley that was known to not have streetlights. Parking quickly and turning off my engine, I sat there staring behind me. In a few seconds, I heard his truck idling now as he slowly drove past the alleyway. With my heart in my chest, I waited another few seconds before I dared start my car and drive home. As I cautiously backed my car out of the alleyway, I felt chills on my spine, as if someone was watching me, and I quickly drove back as fast as I could. Suddenly, however, as I turned my head away from the back of my car and faced the front windshield, my heart stopped and my blood ran cold. The same man in the hat and coat was standing there, with a look in his eyes that I can only describe as pure evil. He stared at me as I sped away, and I have to say that I'm still shivering thinking about his eyes. They were black and brown with red bloodshot lines running across them, a look of pure horror and malice that will haunt me for the rest of my life. I had enough, and perhaps the cold air drove me a bit crazy. Rolling down my window, I screamed over to him.
"What the heck do you want from me?"
"Nothing," he replied. Nothing came from his red and brutalized lips as they cracked into a smile. It was a simple response, but you never expect it. Think about it. Whenever somebody asks the question in the movies, they expect some sort of answer. But this man simply said nothing and continued to stare at me with those eyes of pure evil. He did respond in another way, though. He began to walk towards me, his strides slowing as he got closer. I hit the gas and sped away, not looking back until I was halfway home. Pulling up at my house, I hurriedly got out of the car and quickly locked all the windows and doors. I was terrified, with images of that man filling my head as I stared through the window looking for any sign of him. As I write this, I'm keeping the lights on in the house, and I'm not venturing out for anything. I'm not sure what he wanted, but it was enough to make me never want to go back to that 7-Eleven again. And the worst part about all this is that he might still be out there, lurking in the night somewhere, waiting for his next victim. Or even worse, he could be right outside of my house as I'm writing this. It might just be my imagination, but I swear I heard the soft idling of a truck just beyond the streetlight that I pass by every night. If he somehow found my driveway, he's not getting in, and I'm not leaving my house. Not until the sun rises, at least.